in order to be able to create anything for yourself in your life, you first must be able to conceive of it. And the corollary of that is, if you can't conceive of it, you can't create it. And the problem in trying to teach people to become spiritual masters, enlightened beings, the problem is not in teaching the mechanics of this. The mechanics are really quite simple. What you do is really fairly simple to do. The problem is in convincing people that they have the capacity to do it. Because most of us are stuck in something, now I do have to write this, I'm sorry, something called a paradigm. A paradigm. And a paradigm is a way of thinking or behaving which traps us into believing, like the father with his son, into believing a truth because we've had it drilled into us by so many people that we can't think any other way. And that's why I say this first key is so important. You have to be able to let go of your past. And before we take a break, I am going to try to give you, I'm not going to try, I'm going to give you the formula for doing that. You can also get stuck in a paradigm in your life, in lots and lots of areas. Most of us have these kinds of things that we hang on to and that we believe so strongly because we have been conditioned by all of our well-meaning sort of other egos who have shown up in our life to guide us and have directed us on a path that is mostly directed by our lower identities. And while we pay some attention to our higher identities, we usually just do it on Sunday mornings or Saturday evenings. And the rest of the time we have sort of a whole different way of approaching it. And a paradigm is something, now I have a teacher that I work with that is really, I think, a very enlightened being. And he told me, he said, if you want to get out of the paradigms that you're in, and I was like, me? I'm Wayne Dyer. I'm not stuck in anything, all right? He said, well, one of the things you're going to have to learn to do is you're going to have to learn to kill your ego. I said, well, I really can do that. I can kill my ego. I said, what's the test? How do you know when you've killed your ego? He said, well, the test for killing your ego is you check yourself into a dirty, grungy motel room that smells of piss. And you stay in that room until it no longer matters whether you're there or not, and whether anyone visits you or not. And the minimum stay is 3 months. You have to stay until it doesn't matter whether someone visits you or you visit someone else. You just check yourself in. And I said, when? He said, now. I said, well, I got to call. No, you don't call, you do it. I said, well, I already failed the first test. He said, the second test of being able to get out of a paradigm is to get up between 3 and 6 a.m. every day for 2 years. And in that time period, you walk in the woods, and if there's no woods, you walk in the streets without any fear. You abandon fear and you walk. Or you run. In the woods preferably, and after 2 years, you will know why you are doing it. And I am in that test right now. I've been in it since August the 18th. Another paradigm that I've learned to transcend was when I went through a week of training with Taekwondo. And in Taekwondo, you learn how to use your feet as if they were hands. Now, most of us have been taught that our hands do certain things and our feet do certain things. Our feet are for walking, our hands are for picking things up. But you can learn in quite a short time, if you have banished all of that doubt, and opened yourself up and had that willing suspension of disbelief, if you willingly suspend that, you can train your feet to do everything that your hand can do. You can train it to punch, you can train it to pick things up, you can train it to do virtually anything you can do with your hand. And people who lose their hands learn this very fast. So it's like a new paradigm. When you first start trying to pick things up with your feet, or to try to use your feet to manipulate or to punch with or to whatever, you're just all discombobulated. Now these are just sort of physical things. You can do this in the area of eating. You can do this in the area of your relationships.
I'd like to speak in this program about what I call the rewards for inspiration. Things that will be your payoffs, your prizes, if you decide to move into spirit, into this world of spirit that I'm speaking about here on PBS. Back in the 2,300 or so years ago, we're not quite sure exactly when, there was a great teacher in India. His name was Patanjali. And there are 6 of these things, and I want to cover each one of them in this program. He said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. 3, your consciousness expands in every direction. And 4, you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And 6, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Those are the rewards. It's not like you're going to win the lottery. It's not, and you may. It's not that somebody's going to come riding into your life on a white horse or whatever. These are the rewards. These are the things that are going to be so powerful for you. All of your thoughts break their bonds. All of your thoughts break their bonds. What do we mean by your bonds? Your bonds are the thoughts that you have that keep you disconnected from your source. They are thoughts that are out of harmony with spirit, with God consciousness, with God realization. Because this is basically about being like God, being like source, being like spirit, being like divine mind. In everything, in every thought, in every action, more and more, connecting yourself back, catching yourself. So, the bonds are the ways that we think. I'd like you to imagine a ladder. And this ladder has 10 rungs on it, from the floor all the way up to the top of the ladder. And at the top of the ladder is the highest rung. And at the top of the ladder are the words, "This is my desire," and it's aligned with spirit. Again, this is my desire, and it's aligned with spirit. What is your desire? My desire is to manifest abundance into my life. Perfectly aligned. We came from an abundant source. My desire is to feel a sense of well-being in my body at all times. Perfectly aligned. My desire is to have divine spiritual relationships in my life. My desire is to get the job that I am working towards getting. My desire is to live in a place where I feel most peaceful and most loving. My desire is, and these, whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference. It's the 10th rung. It's the highest rung. It is your spirit aligned with your desire. All right? So here it is. It's right up here. Now you have to ask yourself the question, what is it that I offer up to this 10th rung desire? All right? A 10th rung has to have, in order for it to manifest and show up in your life, it has to have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that match up to that. And if they don't match up, you get out of harmony. See, thoughts are energy. Like everything in the universe, it's energy. Einstein said that nothing happens until something moves. The mistake that most of us make is that we attract what we don't want because our thoughts are on what we don't want. Or we continue to attract what's missing in our life. We're not at number 10, we're at about number 3. And what are some of these on these lower rungs? It probably won't happen. It's very difficult. These kinds of things have never happened for me before. I don't have this kind of luck. We've got the wrong people in the White House. The economy is bad. I don't have the ability to make it happen. I don't really believe it's possible. It's about what kind of energies we have within ourselves that we offer to what our desires that are aligned with Spirit in order for them to manifest.
Your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind begins to transcend the limitations that you've had before in your life, and you stop seeing yourself. You stop seeing yourself as a human being. You begin to see yourself as a spiritual being, as the spiritual essence of who you are. And you literally, Mark, you step outside of your body, and you begin to observe it, and you begin to laugh at all of the folly of it and the foibles of it and the worries that it has, and because you begin to see yourself as an infinite being, not restricted by your birth and by your death and by your height and by your weight and by your looks and all of those kind and all the things that you've achieved in your life and your acquisitions and all of that. You don't define yourself that way anymore. You let go of those what Patanjali called the false self, the illusionary self, the Maya. That's not who you are. Who you are is that from which you came. And as you get back into that place from which you came, you absolutely know that in harmony with God, all things are possible. I mean, it's right out of the scriptures. With God, all things are possible. Now, I don't know how many people you got on the line, but let me ask every one of you. Now, what does that leave out? It absolutely, literally leaves out nothing. There's no thing at all that is not possible. If you can conceive of it and have that knowing and stay in spirit and do it from that place of passion, and passion is just love. I mean, God is love. I mean, that's also from the scriptures. God is love, and he that believeth in love believeth in me. I mean, love and God are synonymous. God and good are one. They're the same thing. There's no difference between the two of them.
So look at the energy of your life. The energy of the foods that we eat, the shows that we watch, the places that you accumulate, the friends that you have, the people that find fault with what you're doing. Look at all of the way, even a simple little thing like feng shui, which is a Chinese form of how you arrange the furniture in your, it's so cool. But I've got a lady who works with me over in Maui, and every time I go away, she'll come back and she'll have this thing moved over here and this thing over there, and I'll say, but I like this here. This is where I shave. No. The feng shui of that isn't quite right, and you don't want to have a red next to you. I just listen to her. My place is one of the most pleasant and beautiful places. Of course, having it on the ocean has a lot to do with it as well. But I believe that energy is in everything. Change the energy of your life and reconnect to the energy of spirit. Spiritual energy is healing energy. And also the way that we talk to ourselves. How do you talk to yourself? If you think, here's one of my favorite quotes, the creative source in your life, here it is right here, this creative source. This source reacts to your belief in shortages with a fulfillment of your belief. If you believe there's shortages out there and you can't attract them into your life, now this is a source that is unlimited abundance. It just is a constant state of creating. It's always creating, okay? So it doesn't know anything about shortages. If you come to this source with a belief that there are shortages in terms of your life, it will fulfill your belief. If you believe that you can't be healed, that it's just impossible for you to be healed, if you believe you can't be happy, if you believe that you have to be miserable, if you believe that you can't attract the right person, if you've got something that you want to fund, some project that you want to fund, and you can't get it funded, and you come to this source with a belief in shortages, it will fulfill your belief.
It only knows how to be. Remember what I said earlier. You are at one with this, and you are also at one with all of its principles. And you have to contemplate yourself as connected to, in harmony with, in rapport with this. It's like what I'm asking you to do in this program. I'm asking you to see yourself at every moment of your life when you're having a thought, when things aren't working, when you're not feeling well, when the right people aren't there. You could say something to yourself. I heard people say this, I tell people always, think from the end. Think from the end. So I was talking to a man one day down where I work out in the gym, and I said to him, he's been sick, he's got nose running, he's got, Snoopy's running out of his nose, he's got, it's disgusting. And I said, how long have you been sick, Marty? You will never believe this answer. He said, in 3 weeks, it'll be a month. What kind of thinking is that? If it doesn't work out for some reason, I don't use blame, I don't get anger, I just simply say to myself, this is the way it is supposed to be, and I'm at peace with it. I choose to be at peace because this is peace. You want to watch the resistance. What kind of self-talk do we have? If you think about what is missing in your life, and you talk to other people about what is missing in your life, and you share a lot with what's missing in your life. I'm missing the right person. My soulmate has never showed up, I'm missing the money. I don't have them. And you talk about all the things that are missing in your life. Here's your connection to Source. Remember, you're always connected. The question is, are you ready to stop living at ordinary levels of consciousness? Are you willing to live at a spiritual level of consciousness in which you are in rapport with that which provides everything? So if you're thinking about what's missing and you go to this universal source asking to have fixed what is missing in your life, you'll have your belief in what's missing continue to be refocused for you. In the Old Testament it says, as a man thinketh, so is he. If you think about what is missing, don't be surprised if you keep attracting what's missing into your life. If you think about what always has been, then don't be surprised if what always has been is what keeps showing up in your life. Because thoughts are energy. And the thought of it's always been this way and there's nothing I can do, resistance. What emotion am I feeling? Frustration. I want to change that. What is my guidance system? I'm going to see how in harmony am I with this energy of Source, with the energy of intention. How in harmony with it am I? The source of all doesn't know anything about things being missing. There's nothing missing in this universal source. And you emanated from that. You are a piece of that. If you're always thinking about what they want for you, and there's no shortage of them, they're called relatives. I'm going to write a book someday that's going to be called Your Friends Are God's Way of Apologizing for Your Relatives. Why? Because, by the way, I gave this same talk to your relatives and they applauded even louder. Okay? Because a friend is someone before whom you can think aloud. A friend is not someone who makes demands on you and tells you what you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing. There are very often, because we believe that we're related to people, we have talk, and then what happens with us is that we start talking to other people about what they want for us. And we despise what they want for us. We get angry at them for even wanting that for us, and then we get surprised when what they want for us keeps showing up. See, self-actualizing people, Abraham Maslow once said, the difference between self-actualizing people, the highest functioning people, and everybody else is that self-actualizing people must be what they can be. Self-actualizing people must be what they can be. What can you be? What can you be?
Life is a mirror. What we attract always mirrors those qualities we have or beliefs we have about ourselves and relationships. What others feel about us is their own limited perspective of life. We must learn that life has always loved us unconditionally. Being needy is the best way to attract an unsuccessful relationship. As author Wayne Dyer says, in any relationship in which two people become one, the end result is two half people. You see, if you expect the other person to fix your life or to be your better half, you are setting yourself up for failure. You want to really be happy with who you are before you enter a relationship. You want to be happy enough so that you don't even need a relationship to be happy. Also, if you have a relationship with someone who does not love himself or herself, then it is impossible to really please that person. You will never be good enough for someone who is insecure, frustrated, jealous, self-loathing, or resentful. Too often we knock ourselves out trying to be good enough for partners who don't have any idea how to accept our love because they don't love who they are. Perhaps you have a very difficult time setting limits, and people tend to take advantage of you. You may be sending out a message that says, I do not value and respect myself. It's okay to abuse me and take advantage of me. But this does not have to be true for you any longer. Begin today to affirm your love and your respect for yourself. Look into a mirror frequently and tell yourself, I love you. As simple as this sounds, it's a very powerful healing affirmation. As you grow in self-love, your relationships will begin to reflect this love and respect as well. Jealous people are very insecure. They don't value themselves. They have no faith in their self-worth. Jealousy is really saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not worth loving, so I know my partner is going to cheat me or leave me for someone else. This creates anger and blame. If you stay with a jealous person, then you are saying that you don't deserve a loving relationship. It's often the same thing with spousal abusers. They either grow up in a family where abuse was normal and they just continue the family pattern, or they blame the world and their partners for their own lack of self-worth. Abusers will never stop the abuse pattern unless they undergo therapy. Abusers almost always have a parent they have deep resentment towards. Forgiveness is a vital issue for them. They must understand their patterns and be willing to change. If you are looking for a mate, I suggest that you make a list of all the qualities you would like this person to have, and do go beyond tall, dark, and handsome, or cute, blonde, and pretty. List all the qualities you want. Then review this list and see how many of these qualities you possess. Are you willing to develop the ones you don't have? Then also ask yourself what it is within you that could be denying or delaying the attraction of this person to you. Are you willing to change those beliefs? Is there still a part of you that believes you are unlovable or unworthy of love? Is there a habit or belief you have that pushes love away? Is there a part of you that says, I don't ever want to have a marriage like my parents, therefore I won't fall in love? Perhaps you have feelings of isolation. It is very difficult to feel connected to others when, for the most part, we are disconnected from our own selves. In this case, you need to really focus some quality time on yourself right now. Become your own best friend. Rediscover what makes you happy, what you love to do. Pamper and spoil yourself. So often we look to others to make us feel loved and connected, when all they can do is mirror our own relationship with ourselves. All of the important work we do is on ourselves. Wanting your mate to change is a subtle form of manipulation, a desire to have power over him or her. It may even be self-righteousness because it is saying that you are better than he or she is. Allow your partners in life to be as they choose to be. Encourage their self-exploration, self-discovery, self-love, self-acceptance, and self-worth. It is not true that there is something wrong with us, though. All relationships are learning experiences. We come together for a period of time. We share energy and experiences for as long as we can. We learn what we can together. Then there comes a time to part. This is normal and natural. Don't cling to an outworn romantic relationship just to avoid the pain of parting. When a relationship ends, life is giving you a chance for a new experience. This can be a time for deep gratitude, of acknowledging the good times you had together, and of appreciating all the learning experiences. Then you can release that relationship with love and get on with the next step in your life. This is a time for loving yourself with tenderness and understanding. This is not the end of your world. It's the beginning of a new phase. With love for yourself, this new time of your life can be far more wonderful than what you are just ending.
1. I don't deserve it. How is it possible for a divine creation to be unworthy? You are and always have been a piece of God, and you know by now that all beings come from non-being. The Bible itself reminds you that it's the Spirit that gives life. So where on earth did you learn to use this excuse? As a developing child, you were weaned on ideas that your worthiness is based on ego-dominated formulations making you what you do, what you have, and what others think of you. Your worth became intertwined with these ego constructs. If I do well, I'm worthy. If I don't, I'm unworthy. If I accumulate more valuable stuff and make more money, I'm worthy. If I don't, I'm unworthy. If I gain the approval of others, I'm worthy. If I'm unpopular, I'm unworthy. Like most of us, you were immersed in a culture that taught and reinforced these ideas, which are the work of the false self. Consequently, as an adult, when you see others who are more successful than you are, have more toys than you do, and enjoy reputations far greater than yours, your first impulse is to make a disconnect between your status in life and your worthiness as a human being. Years of solid training and ego development have caused you to retreat into an I don't deserve it, I'm not worthy mindset. Since these excuses come from the false self, they stay with you until you leave the planet, unless you're willing to tell yourself, okay, I understand where this kind of egoistic reasoning originated, and I can see that I still use it, but I'm practicing the excuses be gone way of life from now on. For every one of these excuse categories, I urge you to decide to start thinking something along the lines like this. Everyone in my life did what they knew how to do, and I chose to buy into it at that time. Today, I'm going to stop this insidious kind of absurd thinking and remind myself that I'm a divine being, an individualized expression of God, and therefore I will no longer entertain thoughts of my being unworthy. I've lived with them long enough, and they never have truly served my highest good. Second excuse, it's not my nature. Have you been allowed to develop as if your Creator were in charge of the process? Of course, your physical body was permitted to take the course nature dictated. You developed the height, body type and shape, hair, eye and skin color, and facial features that nature called for. But what about your personality, your emotional and intellectual development, your aspirations, your self-concept, and your spiritual awareness? Were those aspects of you encouraged to unfold naturally? The excuse, it's not my nature, came directly from the list of what you were taught you couldn't do or be that I elaborated earlier in this program. You were formulated and then crafted into the finished product that your family and culture desired. When you're told, quote, you can't do this, you can only do that, unquote, enough times, and you're willing to become the product the people around you want you to be, then you believe that your nature is what you've been told. You act on the pronouncements about yourself that you've absorbed. So if you hear that you're lazy, undeserving, or uncoordinated often enough, it ultimately leads you to adopt this as your self-portrait. If you're told over and over again that you're just like your father and he never amounted to anything, then you'll ultimately view your nature the way that others viewed your dad. Go back to the question I asked earlier in this program. Who would you be if you didn't have anyone to tell you who you are? Take total responsibility for whatever you believe constitutes your nature, reminding yourself to think in a fresh way about where this excuse originated. Try something like, I chose to allow the opinions of others to be more important than my fledgling opinions of who I was and what I intended to become. Yes, I was small and vulnerable, but it was still my choice. This kicks the old excuse down the stairs and helps you love the person you were then, causing you to tenderly undo what you, and not someone else, have done. While you can never change the actions of others, taking responsibility for your own life will help you make the shift to an excuses-begone existence. Third excuse, I'm not smart enough. Where do you think you learned that you were somewhat shortchanged in the brains department? Well, you were enrolled in an educational system that assigned numbers to your intellectual capacity. A test gave you an IQ number to carry around for life. You learned to listen to a teacher whose lesson plan wasn't designed for the variety of learning modes in the classroom, so all of the students were being exposed to the same instruction. At the end of the week, A test gave you a grade that measured you against the performances of all of your classmates. You all had your place on a bell-shaped curve depending on your aptitudes that day and that week and on that particular subject area. You developed a self-image based on what teachers, test scores, and academic performance indicated. You learned that you were average at spelling, above average in art, but mentally challenged in mathematics. Soon you had the makings of a great excuse. I'm not smart enough, that you hauled out whenever it was convenient. What you failed to learn is that intelligence tests only measure how well you take intelligence tests. It turns out that academic performance has nothing to do with your potential for intellectual mastery. Nonetheless, your young mind hung on to those school experiences and added them to the messages you'd already absorbed about how you're not as smart as your siblings, you've never been good at figuring out numerical problems, or you're not as talented as the kids next door. This cascade of criticism directed at your intellectual capacities can easily lead you to defend yourself from these jabs with excuses. Fact is that since you're a creation who originated in the world of spirit, you have exactly the right amount of smarts to accomplish all that you will do while you're here. It's all perfect, and so are you. To me, a person like my son-in-law, Joe, who can lay a beautiful hardwood floor and have it come out flawlessly, is a genius. Whether or not he performed well in some aptitude test, Joe's genius is displayed in his artistic sense, in that magnificent mind that arranges and positions the grain of the wood, leveling and sealing with endless measurements and computations. You, too, have all the intelligence you need for anything that ignites your creative and problem-solving passion. Believe this about yourself, and you'll never want or need to trot out the excuse, I'm not smart enough, again.
Making the change from dominance to tolerance requires disciplining ego and listening to your sacred self. I'm speaking from personal experience in this matter, and it is one of the toughest assignments my higher self has presented me with. I have spent many years being dominated by my ego, and I have unwittingly made dominance and judgment rather than tolerance a cornerstone of my relating. My suggestions are all from my personal experience of transcending my ego-driven instincts. Making the transition from dominance to tolerance is especially difficult because the desire for ego satisfaction is so strong. To move toward the tolerance that your higher self encourages and away from your ego-driven need to control and judge, you will want to examine the qualities that sustain a tolerant approach to life. To become more tolerant and less controlled by your false self, start practicing being satisfied with what is. If someone you love acts meekly towards you, your ego wants that person to be more assertive. If that person is assertive, your ego then decides to dislike assertiveness. If you eat too much, you start thinking about how nice it would be to be thinner. If you go on a diet, and all of your thoughts then will be about food. If you stay at home for a long period, your ego starts telling you how nice it is to travel. Go on the road, and you start thinking about how nice it would be to stay home. You're in a relationship and begin to imagine it would be nicer to be uninvolved. You're not in a relationship, and you start wanting to be in one. Your children are running around the house, and you start thinking about escaping. You aren't at home, and your ego starts having you think about nothing but your children. If you identify with this kind of inner dialogue, rest assured that ego has temporarily separated you from your sacred self. In its ongoing program to convince you of your separateness, it needs to separate you from oneness with the center of your being. Then it can keep you in that state of trying to dominate and control others as a way of trying to achieve your inner balance and bliss. Trouble is, you cannot get there if you are separated from the awareness of your higher self. As you begin listening to your higher self in quiet and contemplative moments, you begin relaxing and taking the pressure off. You stop the false thinking that everyone in your life needs to be dominated or controlled by you, or that others must live up to your expectations for you to be happy. People are the way they are, and your need to dominate or change them in any way is the edict of your false self. Your ego is, as usual, trying to convince you of your separateness. It also doesn't want you to catch on to how it is controlling your life, so it convinces you that if you don't dominate others, they will get the best of you. Your higher self has absolutely no need to dominate anyone or anything. This is the ticket to freedom. Right now, though, in this very moment, your ego is working to convince you that the higher self and tolerance are ridiculous ideas. Ego will argue that tolerance means permitting criminal behavior and health and social problems. Its favorite example is that it would mean permitting the Hitlers of the world to commit atrocities while we tolerantly look on. Your higher self can see beyond this logic, so of course you can too, if you are willing. When Mother Teresa was asked if she would march against the war in Vietnam, she replied, "No, but if you have a march for peace,
I'll be there. When you become peaceful within, that is what you will have to give away. When you are dominated by your ego, you dominate others. If there is no inner harmony, there is no outer harmony. Ego needs the illusion of enemies in order to control you. When you are controlling others, it is because you have permitted ego to be in control. The paradox here is that you will affect the world in the ways that you wish when you cease trying to improve conditions with intolerance and judgment. It is only when you are not controlled by ego that you can choose to not control others. What you believed was power when you dominated others was actually the external activity of ego controlling you. Your impact on the world at large begins with the smaller world of yourself. You will foster freedom and peace when you are free of ego's control and know the peace of your higher self traveling the path of the sacred quest. One of the first steps along your path is learning tolerance by practicing seeing the world as it is, rather than as you demand it to be. These, then, are some of the ways that the ego attempts to rule our lives. Our goal in knowing our sacred self is to have the higher identities triumph over our lower identities. Essentially, your higher self wants you to be at peace. It wants you to know truth. It no longer needs you to dominate others. It is a very peaceful, loving place to be.
This doesn't mean that you go through life being wishy-washy and being abused and so on. What you're doing is you're avoiding the abuse. Most of the abuse and the victimization and the stuff that haunts so many people in their lives comes from their need to be right and to make the other person wrong and to prove something. If you go in with a healthy self-esteem and a healthy view of who you are, and you know that God is with you and that divineness is something that you're bringing, and you've got help, you've got guidance there with you right there at every second, and you're going in with the purpose of making this a beautiful encounter rather than a contest of wills, and I'm going to be right and they're going to be wrong. There is no right and wrong in this. You find that that you just don't run into that. When Christ or when Buddha would go into a village, that they would raise the consciousness of the village just by their very presence. Your very presence as a divine soul around a situation that could erupt into something very violent, just your presence.
Here's what Saint Germain says about in the I Am discourses. The moment doubt begins to enter, more doubt rushes in. The same with the I Am. If you put your attention upon it, it rushes forth more and more. Where the conscious attention is fixed, there the energy pours. Dear ones, says Saint Germain, do you not see when you want something revealed or to be inspired in some way, do you not see I am that? The moment you say I am, you set in motion this power that has inherent within it all these faculties. It has all substance and must take on whatever form the attention of the mind is fixed on. The I am, the name of God, is the fathomless mind of God. In reaching for understanding, the average student is but contracting the recurring memory of that which has been, instead of going into the heart of God and bringing forth that which never has been. Individuals and students many times do not and will not realize that there have been many civilizations of vast attainments which are entirely unknown to the outer world today. Atlantis and Lemuria, or the land of Mu, as credited by a few today, are but fragments of the great civilizations that have been. Like, we get this idea that it's all now in this world that we're in and it never existed before. To do unusual things, the students who wish to do this take the determined stand, I am the heart of God, and I now bring forth ideas and accomplishments which it has never been brought forth before. Consider only, I am that which I wish to bring forth. The I am presence is the heart of God. You are immediately in the great silence the moment you say I am. If you recognize that you are the I am, that whatever you declare is manifest in that moment. So, when I think about why it is that people aren't able to create the kind of miracles that this group is going to be able to create after we disperse, It's that we have to make our number one relationship, our number one priority, the number one thing in my life. I was talking about this yesterday over and over again with people, with individual people, that my number one relationship in my life, at this point in my life, is my relationship to God, my relationship to my source. It's number one. It's above my relationship to my children. It's above my relationship to any of you, the people that I teach, to people, individuals in my life that I love. My number one relationship, and your number one relationship, needs to be this I am presence that is within you, that is within each and every one of us. And when you can do this, the reason people can't do it is because our identification is so strongly tied into what our senses have told us about our life. There is a place and a possibility that miraculous things can happen, but you have to, in order to banish the doubt, in order to heal this energy body that I'm speaking about here, in order to be, you have to be in such a position that you're not asking, you're not coming from a ordinary place asking someone extraordinary to do something for you. That's sort of what we've learned in our religious model, that God is outside of us, something like a cosmic bellboy, that if we just sort of ask it to do something for us and we behave and we pay a certain amount of money and we go to the right temples and we do the right things, that this external being will then provide us with favors, and that this God has the ability to heal, but it withholds it depending upon what mood it's in and so on. And that's a very different concept that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a concept of God that says that we are all pieces of God. Like T.S. Eliot said, we shall not cease from exploring. And at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time, to know it. You don't have to die to do this. You can know it here. You can know it now. You can say to yourself, as the I Am discourses say over and over and over again, the I Am is the divine work of God. And you are capable of saying I am. And you don't want to add anything after I am that isn't consistent or harmonious or in rapport with God. That is the all-creating knowing, the all-knowingness. We all know everything. There's a higher self within each and every one of us. There's a highest self which is omniscient and omnipotent, all-powerful, and everywhere at once.
If I have a simple tulip bulb in my hand, and I ask you to look at it and say, what is it? You'd say, well, it's just a grungy mass of biological matter. I say, but look at it more closely. And if it gets nurtured in a certain way, that is, it's watered and put in the ground, it will become a tulip bulb. Why? Because it has built into it a future pull. A future pull that you can't see or dissect or find in any lab. It has a future pull, a picture that is part of its DNA, part of its genetic inheritance. If you take a liver cell from your liver and look at it and dissect it, and it has a future pull, it will always be a liver cell. It will never be anything else. In order for you to be able to manifest magic, real magic in your life, miracles, you must first be able to conceive of it. You must be able to conceive of it, and that means no doubt. And the doubt comes by shifting to a knowing rather than a belief. All of this stuff, Deepak and I are talking now about taking a group, making a movie, and taking in this movie a group of babies that say 100 of them. And as they are born, we remove them from the environment that they're in, orphans and so on, children who are to be abandoned, and we place them into a world where there is no doubt, where they get past the lie. You know, we're led to believe a lie, as William Blake said in his wonderful poem, Songs of Innocence. He said, to see the world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand and infinity in an hour, we are led to believe a lie when we see with, not through the eye, which was born in a night to perish in a night, when the soul slept in beams of light. All of us are born in a night to perish in a night, in the physical world. But the soul, the spirit, resides and sleeps in formless beams of light. We are led to believe a lie, a huge lie. And the lie is that there are limitations in our life. Imagine these little children being raised in a world where doubt and impossible and can't do are never exposed to that. Anything that they can conceive of in their mind, they're able to practice. They go to fire putting out school, 101. And in fire putting out school, here's a fire over here, and you sit here, and you work on it with your mind. And you put that fire out. You know what my kids and I do after dinner? Many times after dinner in the evenings, a couple times a week, we go out and we put blankets on the grass. And in the blankets on the grass, we look up at the sky. And we kids say, I'm gonna make clouds. Who wants to make clouds? I want to make clouds, Daddy. I want to make clouds. I'm going to make a rabbit. My kids, all the people in the neighborhood think that my kids are neurotic. Those Dyer kids think they can make clouds. Why not? The same intelligence that flows through them flows through the clouds. Why not shatter the illusion of your separateness and believe that? Imagine a whole curriculum, a whole world in which you were raised to know that there was no doubt. And you can transcend that doubt. And when you do, you begin to see that miracles, synchronicity become very much a part of your life.
And this principle of contemplation is so intriguing to me. How many times I have said to my children, contemplate yourselves surrounded by the conditions which you intend to produce. You get what you think about, whether you want it or not. This thing that we call our thoughts is really the highest place within us, and we can use them to be thoughts that are aligned and think like God thinks, or we can use them as excuses and misalign ourselves and remind ourselves that God doesn't need any excuses. And so as you think of yourself as a God-realized being, you won't be doing that either. Contemplation is the continuous use of your thought process. How you use your thought process to train your mind in a new way. Remember, we are training ourselves in this seminar to elevate our concept of ourselves to a place that matches what it is that we would like to live out and attract and be in our lives. That's what we're doing. We're shifting our conception of ourselves and beginning to see ourselves as pieces of God from which we can never be disconnected. Secondly, your thoughts are actually like things that act to begin the process of materialization. So that what you think about ultimately becomes what you become and what becomes of you. If you contemplate with thoughts that match originating spirit, which is Thomas Troward's word for God, if you contemplate with thoughts that match originating spirit, then you will have the same power as originating spirit. That's an alarming thing to think and say. As you begin to contemplate in the same way that the creative force of the universe contemplates, then what you do is you shift out of your excuse pattern of things can't happen and won't happen into I am thinking
in such a way that originating spirit thinks, and therefore if I continue to stay there, I will have the same power as originating spirit. Because you are originating spirit. You can't be separated from it. When contemplation is a vibrational match to originating spirit, you gain the cooperation of divine mind, attracting and fulfilling your desires. Let me say it again. When contemplation is a vibrational match to originating spirit, and everything is vibration, every thought is vibration, you gain the cooperation of divine mind, attracting and fulfilling your desires. Contemplation, next, is therefore a kind of action in and of itself which sets into motion all of the creative forces of the universe. You want to set into motion the energy that will allow you to attract into your life what you want. You want to be not thinking about a BMW in your driveway or a new Rolex on your arm. You want to be thinking like God thinks and living from those cardinal virtues, and recognize that you do not attract into this world what you want. You attract what you are. And as you become it and it becomes you, it becomes limitless. And a BMW makes no difference. When you rely on excuses, you allow your false self, the ego, to contemplate what you do not want or what you cannot have. Do you get that? When you rely on excuses, you give evidence that you contemplate what you can't have or what you don't want. Every time you come up with a reason why you can't do something or you can't have something, you are giving evidence that you are contemplating in a way that is not aligned with originating spirit. Therefore, you lose the power of originating spirit. Return to the ego. Every excuse you ever use for anything is evidence that you're contemplating what you can't have. Now, why you would want to contemplate what you can't have or what's missing in your life is a meme handed to you because basically you've been taught you're not worthy of all of that. God is worthy of that. You're not God. There's nothing more blasphemous than saying you are God, except we've been saying it here a lot. The presence of excuses in your life is evidence that you contemplate what you can't have or can't do, rather than the infinite possibilities that are inherent in your divine self.